Hello! Welcome to system number 6. Let's find out what this one's all about. Efficiency trumps grit. Now here's a secret. You don't have to be the hardest worker to be happy. As a matter of fact, it helps to be happy when you're not the hardest worker. Let me explain. Most of us assume being busy is a sign of productivity. There's tons of books like these that tell you work hard, push hard, wake up at 4 a.m., do 20-kilometer runs every single day, work 80 hours a week, work harder than everybody, crush it, and outwork everybody else. And in our society right now, being busy is used almost as a badge of honor, as if being busy is a sign that you're important, that you're doing something worthwhile and meaningful. But here's the truth. Being busy is a form of laziness and poor time management, because most of us assume that being busy means we're doing something productive, but activity doesn't actually equal productivity. You see, efficiency trumps grit. And for those that feel like they're not working hard enough, they're not doing enough, they're not learning enough, you're going to love this one, because the truth is you don't have to be the hardest worker to be the most successful or to succeed and be happy in life, both personally and within your career. Let's look at Elon Musk. He has accomplished a ton with his life, and clearly he's reaping the benefits of his hard work right now. But we tend to have this idealized notion that all these successful people did it all themselves. They just work harder than anybody else. But that's not really the truth. Elon doesn't design the spaceships himself, the Starlink satellites himself, the cars. No matter how hard you work, you'll never be able to take on a team or produce as much work as a good team. Because all these people that tell you to work hard, at the end of the day, have a team behind them. And it's never just one person doing all the work to reach these heights. Now, when we talk about efficiency trumps grit and shift your mind here, we need to introduce to you two things. One is the Parkinson's law, and then the other one is the Pareto principle. Let's talk about these and explain why these are important. Now, Parkinson's law is this idea that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. And what does that mean? The law states that we tend to fill up our time with work until our deadline. Let's say that somebody tells you that, hey, you need to get this done by the end of today. Well, you're going to get it done by the end of today. Versus if somebody says, hey, you need to get this done by next week. Let's say you're at school and they ask you to write an essay that's due next week. Most likely, you're going to finish that essay next week. You're going to work on something until its deadline. So Parkinson's law states that, well, depending on how much time you give yourself, that's how much time you're going to take to accomplish your work. Now, Pareto principle is this idea that many of you have probably heard has been popularized by people like Tim Ferriss. And it's the idea that roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes, also called the vital few. And this idea of the 80-20 rule is very common all around us. In business, for example, 20% of customers account for 80% of revenue. And let's say learning programming. 20% of features that you learn in a programming language are used 80% of the time. 80% of wealth in a country is usually owned by 20% of the population. This principle applies all across the world. And everywhere you look, this 80-20 rule exists. Now, why are these two things important when we talk about efficiency trumps grit? And how does this relate to happiness? Well, I'm sure you're the same, where you're always looking at other people around you, maybe on social media, maybe your friends, maybe at work, and you always try to keep up with other people. You always feel you're not doing enough. So you feel bad when you're being lazy or taking time off because somebody else is working harder than you. And this creates a lot of stress in our lives, right? I remember when I was young, in my 20s, and I wanted to keep up with the rest of the world. So I would try to read all the books, do all the courses, to try and work harder than everybody else. You listen to people that are successful that tell you they wake up at 4 a.m, they do 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, then go for a 20-kilometer run. And it makes you kind of feel bad or stressed that, hey, I need to do this too. And your whole life becomes this productivity stress. We need to be as productive as possible. Download this productivity app on our phone. We need to learn every day. We need to exercise every day. You need to work more every day. It's stressful, right? Well, by using Parkinson's law and Pareto principle, we actually realize that just being busy, just overworking and doing things isn't actually a good thing. As a matter of fact, it's a very inefficient way to do things. It's a great way to be unhappy, but not the best way to do things. Let me give you an example. When I was in university, first year I worked harder than any other year. Second year, I worked a little bit less. Third year, a little bit less, and fourth year, a little bit less. But my grades kept improving because I realized that efficiency trumps grit. It was almost like a game to me. Can I study the least amount in order to get better grades than before? And I was able to find throughout university that being efficient with my studying actually resulted in better grades and a lot less work for me too. When I started ZTM, I was all by myself. I would record all the videos, edit all the videos, market the videos. It was so much work. To be honest, I worked more in my first year of ZTM than I do now. But that doesn't mean I do less. It just means that I'm more efficient in how I do things. I hired editors. I hired a team of marketers. I built a team around me to be more efficient. Not work harder and harder and harder, but to figure out what are the systems that I can add in place to be smarter. Now, this idea of Parkinson's law and Pareto principle, I have a whole course on this idea of learning to learn, how to efficiently learn, how to efficiently develop your skills. So we don't need to dive into that because this course is about happiness and mental shifts. The idea and what you need to take away from this video is that you don't need to stress yourself out. Give yourself permission not to be busy, and you will be happier. You also want to be careful not to fall in this efficiency trap. Because as you become more efficient, you're going to fill up your days with more stuff just because you have more time now. So you also need to be okay with not being busy all the time. And this is the key system for this month. It is to realize that you aren't a failure if you aren't on 24/7. The most interesting, happy people that I know don't fill their time with busy work. If you have a lot of time on your hands, well, congrats. You're good at time management. Do things, enjoy your life. It's actually a good thing. Now, let's talk about the action item for this month. So, how can you implement this system in your life for this month? I'm going to ask you to do two things. One is you're not allowed to use the word busy this entire month. If somebody asks you, hey, how are you doing? You definitely can't say, oh, I'm so busy with work, with kids. No, you're not allowed to use the word busy. As a matter of fact, you're going to put an elastic band or a hair tie around your wrist, and every time you catch yourself saying the word busy, you're going to snap that on your wrist. A little bit of pain. The second thing you're going to do is to set a time where you'll stop working this month no matter what. A hard deadline where you're going to say, after this time, I'm doing no work. If you're a student, you cannot study after this time. For example, I actually don't work past 3 o'clock. I like waking up early in the morning, doing work then, but after 3 o'clock, I shut down my work brain and I enjoy my life. I go walk outside, do things outside of work. It's a hard deadline no matter what. So I want you to create your off time this month. You can set whatever time you want, but the earlier the better, where you say, this is my off time. After this time, I can do whatever I want, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Now, did I just spend an entire video to tell you to be lazy? No. Remember, the key in happiness is to give yourself permission not to stress yourself out about being productive and doing things all the time. Because these books aren't always the best for happiness. Instead, realize that efficiency trumps grit. And if you want a little extra reading this month, I recommend this book, Smart Cuts by Shane Snow. It's one of my all-time favorite books and talks about this idea of smart cuts where you can be efficient with your career and really be happier in life. I'll see you next month. Bye-bye.